Waiters, what dating disasters have you witnessed? I was bartending at a restaurant in San Francisco. This guy came in and ordered a vodka martini. He downed it and ordered another. Halfway through his third he called his wife and asked for a divorce. After he hung up we talked about the Red Sox. Him from Boston. Ha 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 ha. Honey, I want a divorce. Click hey. How about them Red Sox? I was bartender at a country club in college and I watched a woman curse her husband out at their table because the husband kept flirting with the waitress. She got really loud and walked out. Keep in mind this was a nice restaurant at an upscale country club. The waitress felt it was all her fault, but she told me the guy had been coming in there often and tipping her 100% of the bill every time. I worked at a bar in a hotel for 5 years. I had a table come down from their hotel room and sit at one of my pub tables for dinner. From the moment they sat down, you could tell the wife was furious about something. She was unbelievably pleasant toward me, but did not say a single word to the man at the table. I get their drinks, and then their orders. He ordered steak and she ordered the sauciest pasta dish we had on the menu. About 20 minutes later, the wife still hadn't said a word to the man. Since they sat down, their food was done and my food runner set it on the table. Right as I was about to walk over to see if they needed anything else, I saw the woman stand up, say go duck yourself, John, as she picked up the plate of pasta and dumped it all over his head and down into his lap. Then she very calmly walked out of the bar and back up to her hotel room. I spent a few minutes helping the man clean up and got my manager to come handle the situation from there, as it was way above my pay grade at that point. Later in the night, the woman came back to the bar without the man and we talked for a while. Turns out he admitted to cheating on her right before their dinner reservation. I never saw either of them again. Okay, here's a great story that I've been wanting to share. I work at a small bakery in my town. I'm general kitchen staff and not a waiter. But I was there when this all went down. It was around 2 in the afternoon. The day had been normal, but suddenly I saw the retail staff in a huddle and took my first opportunity to go see what was happening. Apparently a couple had come in on this summer day, ordered 2 bowls of soup and sat down. The girl that took their order went to the back and prepared their soup for them, then brought it back out. In the time it took for her to get the soup, the woman had taken off her flip-flop, put her leg across the table, and the guy was going to town sucking on this lady's toes in the middle of the restaurant. The waitress didn't notice until she went to place the soup on the table. She stood there in shock, and the couple was oblivious to her presence. This guy's going all in, and the lady is starting to moan by the time they realize their soup is ready. The waitress was in complete shock for the rest of her shift, and that couple is no longer allowed on the premises. This place has even more weird stories. From someone forcing open the back door to ask for a hamburger to a complete stranger coming out of the basement and acting like he's supposed to be there. Not to mention the time I watched a bird fly out of a hole in the ceiling. Kentucky can be a weird place. I used to work at a bar where 70% of the customers were on Tinder dates. There was a line of 2-person booths along the wall. When you first walk in, there were 2 dudes sitting by themselves in 2 different booths. Both of them were facing the door. One was in the first booth, one was in the last booth. This girl comes in and walks up to the first booth, says hi to the guy, and sits down. They are chatting for about 5 minutes when the other guy who is sitting by himself comes up to her and says, "Hey, I'm so and so, aren't you so and so?" Question mark. They all talk for like 30 seconds, and she gets up and goes and sits with the other guy at the last booth. Eventually a different girl shows up for a date with the guy at the first booth. I don't know exactly what happened, but I almost died watching it unfold. She was definitely embarrassed. Bartender here. A couple on a blind date took their seats directly across from the dishwasher, so I had to pretend I couldn't hear him. 40 plus, balding, overweight, and drunk, asking her, 30 plus, pretty, friendly, and level-headed, "Listen, I see you over there, just amazing and gorgeous, and I'm wondering what you're seeing in me. What do you think?" She smiled/cringed and made an effort to sidestep his questions and change the subject at least 3 times. while he ordered shots of Fireball at an upscale establishment for both of them. She would politely refuse, and he would end up drinking both of them. He didn't seem to be big on learning. I worked fine dining in Vail, Colorado. I once saw a lady throw red wine all over a guy's shirt and leave. He sat and continued eating his spaghetti plate. No ducks. I worked briefly as a waiter at a semi-nice place near me. I had a couple come in for a date who have seen there a few times before. I think it was their regular dating place. She was very clearly sad and was talking about how her uncle was really sick and was probably going to pass away soon. He decided to pull out the ring and pop the question anyway. Seriously, dude? Read the room. A couple of friends and I went to the Mexican restaurant where another friend was waiting tables. There was a couple kind of catty-cornered from us that had a bit of an off vibe. We could see them, but not really hear them. So we asked our server friend what was up. She said it seemed to be a first or second date that was a bit awkward. The girl had ordered one of those enormous margaritas and was not sharing it. I had to go make a phone call back in the payphone days, and when I came back, I ended up sitting with my back to the couple. Maybe 10 minutes later, I hear our friend the server say, no, and the sound of a full punch bowl being emptied from a great height. Giant margarita girl had stood up, swayed a bit, and vomited all over their meals, table, and the surrounding floor. The restaurant camped everyone sitting nearby, and the girl's date abandoned her in the ensuing chaos. I was a waiter at a very famous, upscale restaurant and a gentleman approached the maitre requesting someone take pictures of him proposing to his girlfriend. Since I was the closest asshole to the maitre, I was tasked with performing this duty. After stalking the table for a solid hour, the moment was inevitably approaching. I set up at an angle she couldn't see me, and when he busted out the ring I started taking as many pictures as I could. Anyone who has tried to capture a once-in-a-lifetime moment on camera knows that you're not really watching what's going on. You're just trying to frame the moment. After about 20 to 30 pictures I slowly realized that she was declining the proposal and the scene was quickly degenerating into a 5-alarm dumpster fire. However, I was far enough away that I couldn't hear what was being said and couldn't be sure of what was transpiring, so I continued taking pictures just in case. Finally I stepped back and watched the scene unfold in reality as she stormed out of the restaurant in embarrassment and he scrambled to pay the bill and chase after her. Had requested that I use my phone and send the best pictures to him. Needless to say, he never approached us for the pictures, and I have about 100 plus pictures of a wedding proposal gone wrong somewhere deep in my iCloud photo bank. This happened to a friend of my wife. She met a guy on a dating site. They agreed to meet at a strip mall parking lot and go to dinner together from there. He asks if he can drive her car because it's a Camaro and has never driven one. So they go together in her car to a restaurant a couple miles away. Dinner goes okay. Nothing too crazy. Then he gets up to go to the bathroom and never comes back. After 10 minutes, she gets up to check on him and her car is gone. Has dashed on the bill and stolen her car. She pays the bill and gets an Uber home and calls the police to report her car stolen. Turns out the guy just left it in the parking lot where they originally met and seems to think he did nothing wrong. Last I heard, has still being charged with auto theft. This couple came into this bar that I worked at and it was business as usual. Took their order, brought out drinks and food, including dessert. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, this couple began to argue as they worked through their dessert about the guy didn't bring a battery pack to charge their phones. Home jurors straight up screaming at this dude. Luckily, it was a really slow night and they were only ones in the restaurant. I offer to charge their phone if they have their cable. I never offer to charge anybody's phones because I don't like dealing with the hassle. But I felt for the guy because I was that guy at one point. This is the point where I feel like I should have thought something was up. The guy hands me what looks like a busted up prepaid phone you get from the supermarket and what looked like a chewed up charger cable. I run to the back and go to charge it, only to find out the cable wasn't compatible with the phone. I go back to them and notice they left without paying. I was more impressed than I was upset. TLDR, couple pretended to get into argument over charging phone, then dine and dashed after I go in an attempt to help. Guy 1 and GF are fondling each other at my bar. Guy 2 joins them at the bar and they quickly separate and behave. The three go off into the casino, but stop back for drinks a few times. Early AM Guy 2 does a shot and walks away. I can tell he isn't happy. He comes back and says he has a couple of hours to kill before his plane leaves. We get to chatting and he tells me he just broke up with his GF as suspects she snuck up to the room and mailed his best friend when he couldn't find either of them for an hour. I ask if it was Guy 1 and GF. He confirms it, and I'll let him know he is making the right choice as they were making out at the bar before he came down. He thanks me for confirming, leaves a huge tip, and lets me know what is happening in case there is any confusion with the hotel. An hour or so later Guy 1 and GF are at the bar whispering and arguing. I casually ask if everything is okay. They say they are locked out of their room and can't find their friend who paid for the room. They tried to charge the bill to the room too, but my computer showed the room was empty. I told them Guy 2 had been in earlier, but checked out, and his flight was already in the air. Then I watched the meltdown. Guy 1 had paid for his BFF and GF to spend a week in Vegas with him. They cheated and got caught. He checked out and flew home, and they had nowhere to stay for the week, and no money for even basic food. Their luggage had been packed and left in the baggage hold. They did everything they could to get out of paying for their drinks as they were hella expensive. Left no tip and didn't have a place to sleep or even change clothing at 5 AM. TLDR, don't cheat on the person paying your way if you can't pay your own way. I used to bartend at a Yard House in the before times. Yard House is a corporate place that's basically a nicer sports bar with a ton of beer on tap with stupid, giant novelty glasses. I had a couple at the bar during happy hour drinking from one of the big glasses and they ordered some onion rings that were half price. He jokingly proposed with an onion ring and she started laughing and jokingly said yes, then he busted out an actual ring. She wasn't laughing anymore. Not a disaster, but it could have been. Guy hires private room in the very fine dining establishment I'm working in. Dinner for two. Champagne. Proposal dinner. Gives us instructions to bring the champagne. When she says yes, I jump the gun and poke my head into the room holding the champagne, just to check I haven't missed it. Guy sees me, has a panic fit and throws up all over the table. Woman is very concerned, goes over to see if he's okay. He hits duck it and pulls out the ring. Drops to one knee and proposes, with vom still on him and the table. She bursts out laughing, says yes and kisses him on the head. Get them a new table in a different room and serve the champagne. MFW, I hope I find love like that one day. Bartender for a couple on a Tinder date. They talk for about an hour. He goes to the bathroom, but left his jacket on the back of his chair with his wallet and keys in. She stole them, stole his car, and went shopping. That poor schmuck refused to call the cops for an hour because it was going so well. I felt bad for him. I used to work as a hostess at a thank deity. It's the weekend already. Guy makes a reservation at the most booked table. It's by the window, all romantic etc. Also super visible from any other part of the restaurant. Comes in, all dressed up, and with a suitcase. Strange, but okay. A few minutes later, his date arrives. They laugh, flirt. We actually thought it's an anniversary or has going to propose or something the way it was going. Not halfway through the evening she starts screaming at him. He broke up with her and actually packed her suitcase, then paid and left her there sobbing at the table alone. We got her a brownie on the house, because just watching that we felt fucking awful. Not my story, but my partner just told about this happening at his work. We live in a pretty large university college, and one time a guy came in with a plant for a date. He sat with it at the table, ordered it food, drinks, and dessert. He was a total gentleman to the plant. Turns out he lost a bet with his frat brothers. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.